We took my cousin in after she lost her family, but what she did to me one day changed my life forever. She accused me of something so terrible that I can't even say it right now. After that, my family beat me badly and then disowned me. Hi, everyone. I'm a 38-year-old man, and I have a problem I need help with today. I feel really conflicted and alone. I have nowhere else to turn, and since I've been reading stories here for a while, I thought this would be the best place to share mine. I'd really appreciate any advice you could offer me. There's a lot of background, so I need to go over some things. This is going to be a long story. First, let me tell you about my terrible cousin Rachel. She's the worst person I've ever known. I know that sounds harsh to say about a family member, but for Rachel, it's true. Then there's my mom and dad, which is a whole other issue, and I'll get into that soon. As I got older and learned about psychology and why people do bad things, I tried to give Rachel the benefit of the doubt. But in the end, I just couldn't forgive her, and I still hate my whole family because of what happened. Sure, Rachel had a tough childhood. My uncle, who was Rachel's dad and my dad's brother, was the black sheep of the family. He was an abusive, lazy man who drank and smoked all the time and never worked. He hurt Rachel, and her mom wasn't much better. I understand how trauma can deeply affect people, especially when they experience it at a young age. But I believe it's our responsibility as people to deal with our trauma so that we don't pass that pain on to others. We ended up passing the pain we felt onto others around us. Sadly, Rachel never learned to break this cycle and became a lot like her parents in many ways. My parents knew about Rachel's tough home life, so they were always very protective of her. They tried to help by calling Child Protective Services on my aunt and uncle, but when the authorities showed up, Rachel's parents always managed to talk their way out of trouble. Then one day, Rachel's parents were in a car accident. They were running from the police after robbing a store to support their drug habit. They crashed their car and both died. Rachel was left an orphan, which is a difficult thing to go through, even when your parents are as awful as hers were. Instead of letting her end up in the foster care system, my parents decided to adopt her. Even though I didn't know Rachel very well, despite all our family get-togethers, and even though our interactions as kids were always unpleasant, I was kind of excited about having a little sister move in. Sure, she was only a year younger than me, but as an only child, I often felt lonely and thought it would be fun to have someone to play with. If only I had known how much my life would change after that, I would have begged my parents to send her far away, because her heart was as cold as ice. My mom and dad weren't perfect parents either. They drank a lot and weren't great with managing money, but they worked hard to provide for me. They did their best to support me, but even when I was young, I overheard my mom talking to her friends. She would say how she had always wanted a daughter instead of a son. She didn't know I was nearby listening, but even as a little kid, I understood what she meant. Those words cut deep, like a knife. As soon as Rachel moved in, it felt like my mom and dad acted like I didn't exist anymore. I've always been a shy, awkward kid, and I guess that disappointed my traditional parents. My dad had been the captain of the football team in high school, but I couldn't even throw a ball without tripping over my own feet. I was clumsy and didn't know how to talk to girls, while my dad had been a ladies' man, dating all over town before settling down with my mom. No matter what I did, I couldn't get a girl to like me. My parents always told me I needed to toughen up. They said I was too soft, so my self-esteem was already pretty low. But when Rachel came into the picture, it was completely destroyed. Mom and dad adored Rachel. They treated her like she could do no wrong. If she drew a picture, no matter how bad it looked, they would hang it on the fridge. But when I drew something, they'd barely glance at it before tossing it aside. Rachel would get praised for getting BS in school, while I got straight A's, and they never once told me they were proud of me. She always got the best birthday parties, the best Christmas gifts, and everything she wanted. When Rachel started going to school with me, things only got worse. She was a grade below me, but she did everything she could to make my life miserable. I was an awkward nerd, and Rachel was pretty, popular, and loved to gossip. She quickly became part of the cool crowd, the jocks and the cheerleaders, the same people who loved picking on me. Rachel fit right in with them, like a fish in water. Her boyfriend was the captain of the football team, and he was also my biggest bully. He and his friends would do horrible things to me, like shoving my head in the toilet and other humiliating acts. No matter how hard I tried to stay out of their way, I got beaten up every single day. Rachel never once stood up for me. Instead, she'd watch with a smirk on her face, or sometimes even laugh. I'm not exaggerating when I say she acted like a sociopath. She made my life at school a living nightmare, and she wasn't satisfied with just that. She also made sure my home life was just as unbearable. It felt like I was living in a prison, and the torment would start all over again the next day at school. I never got a break. The emotional damage I suffered during that time can't be overstated. It changed me forever. I'm scarred because of all the abuse I went through. I tried telling my parents about the bullying at school, but they brushed it off like it was nothing. They said it was just boys being boys. My dad would always tell me I needed to man up, as if that would fix everything. I wanted the bullying to stop. My parents saw me with black eyes and bruises, but they still didn't care. Rachel would just stand there and laugh during these talks. Besides that, she was always making up lies about me. She would break things around the house and blame me. Sometimes, she would even cry and tell my parents that I hit her. She was so good at lying that she almost made me doubt myself, like maybe I really did what she said. Of course, my parents believed everything she told them. I lost track of how many times I was unfairly punished for things I didn't do. Over time, this started to wear me down. I felt worthless and became more and more depressed. As the stress piled up, my grades started to slip. Even though my grades were still better than Rachel's, my parents scolded me for it. This just made me feel even worse. Because my grades dropped, I couldn't get into the university I dreamed of. I felt stuck in our small town, in that miserable house. I ended up going to a local community college and worked hard on an engineering degree. I just wanted to be successful and get far away from my awful family. Rachel, on the other hand, had no plans for her future. She didn't even graduate from high school. She dropped out at the start of her senior year and began sleeping with nearly every guy in town. She partied all the time, got hooked on drugs, and my parents kept making excuses for her. They would say something weak like they disapproved of her behavior, but they were too soft on her. They made it easy for her to keep acting the way she did. During this time, I was still living at home, and Rachel's treatment of me got even worse. I remember one night she had a party at the house with her boyfriend at the time. She had a bunch of boyfriends. All her friends were there, and I was trying to study for an exam. I asked them politely if they could quiet down, speaking in the nicest way possible. But Rachel and her boyfriend took it the wrong way. She told her boyfriend to kick my butt, and he did just that. He beat me so badly that I had to call the police. I was taken to the hospital for my injuries, but my parents and Rachel told me I was the one overreacting. They even convinced me not to press charges against that guy. Looking back, I should have sued all of them. Then came the day that changed my life forever. I was 23 at the time. Rachel always had to be the center of attention. Everything had to revolve around her, like she was the center of the universe. Whenever something went wrong in her life, she took it out on others. She was often rude to my parents, even though they had done so much for her over the years. But whenever anything went wrong in her life, I was always her main target. Recently, Rachel had been dumped by another boyfriend. I guess in her mind, this guy was the one. She was really upset after this breakup. She never made good choices when it came to men, and to make things worse, this guy was the father of her child, Frank. Rachel was already struggling to take care of him, so most of the responsibility had fallen on me and my parents. It was a bad situation, and I wasn't happy about it. Despite everything we were doing to help her, Rachel had been extra rude and sour lately, like we owed her something. Right before the event that changed everything, Rachel and I had gotten into another argument. This wasn't unusual. We argued a lot, and things often got heated, so I didn't think much of it. During the argument, she kept insulting me, calling me an ugly loser and throwing all kinds of nasty words my way. I'd had enough of her abuse, so I snapped. I told her that every man would leave her because she was worthless. She looked furious, angrier than I had ever seen her, but I just walked away, thinking it was another dumb fight. I didn't realize how seriously Rachel had taken that comment. I was minding my own business one day when my parents suddenly came to my room and literally broke down my door. I was in total shock. demanding to know why my parents and other family members had suddenly barged into my room. I was so confused. Then I saw Rachel walk in, crying like she was heartbroken, but I knew it was all fake. I had a bad feeling about what was coming, and sadly, I was right. That's when Rachel dropped a huge lie on me, and it hit me hard. She pointed at me and said, "There he is, the one who assaulted me." My jaw dropped. She was accusing me of something terrible. I was stunned and immediately thought back to our argument a few days before. I asked her if that was why she was doing this, but my dad jumped in and yelled, "Shut your mouth and stop making excuses." I kept denying the accusation, but that's when the punches started. My whole family began beating me. It was brutal, far worse than anything I had ever experienced, even at school. They told me in no uncertain terms to pack up my few belongings and get out of the house immediately. They also made it clear I was lucky they weren't reporting me to the police. I kept saying I was innocent, but they told me to shut up. My family disowned me, all because of Rachel's lies. It was the worst day of my life. I was homeless. But despite everything they did to me, I held on. I made a life for myself. I showered at the college gym, washed my clothes at the laundromat, worked 2 jobs, and went to school full-time. Eventually, I saved enough to get my own place. I did it all by myself, with no help from anyone. Now, I'm 38, and I haven't spoken to my family since the day they beat me and threw me out. But today, something unexpected happened. I got a call from Rachel. It was from my parents' phone number, so I guess she's still living with them. Even though it had been years since we last spoke, I immediately recognized her voice, and I froze. Just hearing her voice brought back all the trauma. But something was different this time. Rachel's tone was softer. I asked her why she was calling, and she asked how I was doing, something she had never cared to ask before. Then she told me the real reason for her call. She said she was dying. That's right, Rachel has terminal cancer. I didn't say anything after she told me all that. She went on to say she was a single mom now, with Frank, who's 19, and another son, Tyler, who's 16. Then, out of nowhere, she apologized. She said that God was punishing her for lying about me and accusing me of assaulting her. I was shocked. She asked for my forgiveness, and I didn't know what to say. I told her I needed time to think and hung up the phone. My heart was racing. Not long after the call, she sent me a text explaining everything again and saying how sorry she was. She talked about how her sons would grow up without a mom and how she regretted being such a terrible person her whole life. I still haven't responded to her text, and I'm torn about what to do. Should I forgive her? The truth is, I still hate her deeply. What do you guys think I should do? What's up, everyone? Revenge Online here. We've got some big updates on this story, and honestly, that twist really took me by surprise. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss another story. Here's the first update, and it's a short one. Hello, everyone. OP here with an update. I got a lot of great advice. Some people said I should forgive Rachel and move on. I get the idea that holding on to hate is just extra baggage. But others said that Rachel's illness isn't a good enough reason to forgive her for all she's done. My family is probably still as toxic as ever. After thinking it over, I made my decision. This might upset some of you, but I chose the path of revenge. I found Rachel's Facebook page and saw that her sons, Tyler and Frank, were on her friends list. I sent them screenshots of Rachel's confession. Then, I tracked down her ex-husband and sent him the same screenshots. Finally, I sent them to my parents and the rest of the family. I want everyone to know what kind of person Rachel really is. I should probably be more worried about the fallout from all this, but honestly, I don't care. I'll keep you all updated on what happens next. Update number 2. Good afternoon, everyone. OP here, and wow, do I have an update for you. Can you believe my parents actually called me today with a load of nonsense? It's been 17 years since we last spoke, and honestly, I had no desire to talk to them again. I should have known they would try to reach out after I dropped that bombshell about their golden child, Rachel. To my surprise, at first, Mom and Dad were pretty apologetic. They admitted that it was wrong to disown me just based on Rachel's lies without hearing my side of the story. I reminded them that they had a habit of doing that long before this whole incident even happened. I guess they expected me to be happier about their apology, but when I wasn't, they quickly changed the subject to Rachel's cancer. They said I was wrong to involve Rachel's kids and ex-husband and told me I should have waited longer to share the truth with the family. I was blunt and told them I didn't care. I reminded them that they should have thought about all this before they disowned me and ruined my life. I also made sure to bring up how they conveniently forgot about the time the whole family beat me up. I was furious. I hung up, hoping to never hear from them again. Update number 3. Hello, everyone. Today is a beautiful day, and I've got some big news to share with you. I got another phone call from my parents this morning. I hesitated to answer, but I figured it must be important if they were calling again, so I picked up. My parents were in tears, crying uncontrollably. They told me Rachel passed away this morning. But it's only been 5 days since she confessed her lies to me, and now she's gone. I know this might sound cold or heartless, but I didn't feel anything. Not a single thing. My parents asked why I wasn't saying anything, and I told them straight up, I don't care. They called me heartless and cruel for saying that about my own cousin, but I reminded them that they were the ones who had abandoned their only son. I could hear them starting to protest and scold me, but in that moment, I realized I had the power now, not them. I hung up the phone just like I did the day before. Rachel's gone, so at least she won't be around to mess with me anymore. But I feel like my family still doesn't get the message. They need to learn a lesson, and I don't want to sound mean, but I think a little more revenge is necessary to make sure they understand. So, I've come up with a plan, and I'll soon be back to explain what's next. Update number 4. Hey guys, OP here with another update. Today was amazing, everything went just as I planned. Let me get right to it and tell you what happened. It wasn't hard to find the details about Rachel's funeral. Honestly, I was surprised they were even having a funeral for her, considering what kind of person she was. But I found the information online and started preparing. I even rented a tuxedo to make sure I looked sharp. Of course, I wasn't invited to the funeral, so I decided to invite myself. I figured it would be a nice surprise for my dear family. After all, none of them had seen me in 17 years, and they never bothered to check how I was doing. Now it was time to show them who's in charge. I arrived at the funeral a little late, and the service had already started. When I walked through the church doors, I saw a surprisingly big crowd there to say goodbye to Rachel. That worked out well for me, more people to witness the scene I had planned. I walked straight up to the podium and told the preacher to step aside. People in the crowd started whispering, trying to figure out who I was. I heard someone say, "Is that?" They couldn't quite place me at first, but it was time to remind them. I gave my speech and I didn't hold back. I exposed my parents for all their neglect and abuse. Then I laid out every terrible thing Rachel had done to me over the years. I didn't care who was listening, even if there were kids in the crowd. They needed to know that their mother was a horrible person. I trashed my entire family to their faces and reminded them how they turned their backs on me when Rachel falsely accused me of assault. It felt good to finally say everything I'd held in for so long. I told them it was disgusting how they immediately believed that I did something so horrible to my own cousin without even hearing my side. That's when my father stood up and told me to shut up and leave. He said I was ruining the funeral and that no one in the room wanted to hear me spread lies about Rachel. Lies? It was almost laughable. Even after knowing the truth about Rachel, they were still defending her. Dad even threatened to call the police if I didn't leave. I'm not a violent person, but at that moment, I was ready to fight him. Then something unexpected happened. Tyler and Frank stood up. No one had asked them what they thought, and for the first time, they spoke out. They confirmed everything I said about Rachel. They shared how she neglected and abused them, spent all her money on drugs and alcohol, and didn't care for them at all. There was an uproar in the funeral hall. I could tell my family was shocked. I guess hearing it from Rachel's own children hit differently than hearing it from me, the family's black sheep. I left them there, arguing and grumbling amongst themselves. I had said what I needed to say, and I was done. I walked out of the funeral and headed back to my apartment. Final update. Hello, everyone. OP here with a final update. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you for your supportive comments and advice. It really helped me get through all of this. I also wanted to share that I ended up adopting Tyler and Frank. After everything they went through growing up with Rachel and my family, I think they were relieved to see someone stand up and speak the truth at the funeral. The rest of the family wanted nothing to do with the boys, and they had nowhere to go after Rachel passed. Their father was in prison, and my parents refused to take them in because, in their eyes, the boys had disrespected their mother and brought shame to the family, as if they were some kind of royalty. But I'm glad to have them with me now, and we're moving forward together. Thanks again for all your support. I did the right thing by adopting Tyler and Frank. We've moved far away from the rest of the family, and we're living a great life now. Tyler and Frank don't act anything like their mother, and I'm proud to see them growing into great men. Thank you all for your support. The comment section wasn't happy with my family, and it was clear to everyone how toxic they were. Even when I stood up at the funeral and told the truth about Rachel, they didn't want to hear it, even though I had proof. It wasn't until Tyler and Frank confirmed everything, I said that people started to realize how abusive Rachel had been. In the end, I knew I couldn't let Tyler and Frank grow up in that toxic environment, so I took them in. A lot of people in the comments section thought that was the right thing to do, and I agree. Let me know your thoughts on today's story, guys. My name is Revenge Online, and I share stories like this every day. If you want to be a part of these daily stories, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I'll see you tomorrow, and remember, it's cool to be kind.